Hi, I'm Katie from What Katie Did, and today I'm going to talk about what not to do in a corset. I was talking about corsets in a video a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned something about what not to do, and someone mentioned on YouTube that it would be great to have more tips about what not to do in a corset. And normally, when I talk about what not to do in a corset, I do it from your point of view, is I'm concerned about you and your comfort and your health. Whereas today I'm going to reverse it and actually talk about how to keep your corset in tip-top condition and what's best for your corset. Because of course when you buy a corset it is often a big investment, and obviously you want to keep it, be able to wear it for as long as possible and keep it wearable for as long as possible. So I'll tell you a few of my secret tips, and also the one thing that all corseteers hate, and I'm sure it's not just us. This is the one thing that really drives us crazy. So here we go. Firstly, I want to mention the components used to make your corset, and they do make a big difference as to how long your corset will last. And I've spoken about this before, but I wear my corsets really hard. I wear a corset every day, and I really expect them to last. A few years ago, I was at a corset conference, and Mr. Pearl was there. And if you don't know who Mr. Pearl is, he's probably the best corseteer in the world at the moment, and he's the most adorable person as well. And he was talking about his life as a corseteer. And one sentence that really struck me is that he was talking about sheer corsets. And he said he knew of a client who wore a sheer corset 23/7, which means they wear it 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. So basically just take it off to bathe, which is totally hardcore. And their single layer sheer corset, he said they get through one a month. And he said it as if it was nothing. And I was like, wow. Because a lot of people expect corsets to last forever, and it is a huge expense to them. It is a huge investment. And so I would like to point out that corsets last longer than a month. I expect a corset I'm wearing to last a good year, and I wear it every day, and I wear it hard, and I expect it to last a year. And the one I'm wearing, I've been wearing for several months now, and is showing signs of wear. And I know in the next 3 months they're going to have to change over to a new one, and I'm not looking forward to it because your body gets used to it. But one thing when you look at buying a corset is you might be saving up forever and ever, but you have to accept that you are going to have to replace it. So you're going to have to work with one that you can afford to replace, like on a yearly basis, because it just isn't going to last forever. If you are waist training, if you are wearing a corset every day, then a more expensive corset will last longer than a cheaper corset. And this is down in a lot to do with the components. And in our corsets, we use spring steel busk, and in cheaper corsets, it will just be plain steel. And spring steel means that it springs back into shape. Now, of course, all metal springs back into shape, and you can bend it, like you can bend the busk quite a lot. And with there's always going to be a point where it's not going to spring back into shape, and this applies with spring steel as well as plain steel. But plain steel, it will snap a lot sooner than spring steel, and it will bend and not go back into shape a lot sooner than spring steel. And this is one of the reasons we changed corset factory a few years ago. If you have a What Katie Did corset now, in our current factory, which we've been working with for 4 or 5 years now, they've all got the pink lining, and that basically differentiates the new factory from the old factory. The old factory, I wasn't 100% happy with the quality of the busk steel they were using, and also the fabrics they were using, and this went back and forth for well over a year. And my husband said to me, well, no one wears a corset like you wear a corset. That, they're not going to last that. You wear it day in, day out, and most people aren't going to do that. And I'm like, well, we're actually selling it as a corset which you should be able to do this in, and I know most people won't, but for me and for the amounts that people are spending, I expect it to be good enough to be able to do that. So it went back back and forth for over a year, and in the end I just cut my losses and we had to move on to a different factory, which was sad because we'd been working with them for over a decade. But I've said this in other videos as well, what is acceptable at the beginning of your career, at the beginning of your label, isn't acceptable at the end. And unfortunately we have lost a few people on the way who haven't grown with us. It's a case of continually having to improve and being aware and change, and we can only grow and we can only move forward if we keep that ethos. So back to the busk. When you bend it, obviously you can bend it, and one of the things you shouldn't do is bend. Really, you shouldn't really bend in your corset, and of course it's impossible not to bend, but there's a meme which goes around which I really don't like at all, which it says boots before corset, and I don't do that, but it is kind of true. If you put your corset on and you get fully dressed and then you're bending on to put your shoes and doing buckles up on shoes, that's really not good for your corset because you're putting unnecessary stress on your corset. Of course, I have access to all the corsets I could dream of, and so I do put my corset on before my shoes, and I do really think I should get into the habit of doing it the other way, but it's totally unnatural to me. I'll tell you what I do. I always put my stockings on before I put my corset on. I don't do the suspenders or garters up, but I have my stockings on. So and then I put my corset on and then I put my garter belt on. But finding putting stockings on with your corset on, you really are bending over the toes, and I find that a lot worse than actually putting your shoes on. So you do have to be wary about bending for things in a corset, because yes, your corset will allow you to bend, but it's really not good for your corset. And if you want your corset to be as long as possible, and if you don't have access to a whole warehouse of corsets as I do, then it's best to keep your bending to the minimum. The second thing you need to be aware of is tying your laces around your waist. And I know in the very early days, like 20 years ago, I used to do this as well, and I was unaware that it actually can damage the corset. But the problem is what you do with the laces at the back, because you have this big bow, and I have done another video about how to hide your laces, so check that one out. But if you tie your laces around your waist, it will eventually damage the fabric, and of course it is your corset and you can do what you want with it, but if you're going to be wearing it every day and you want it to last a long time, then try not to tie your laces around the waist. So with a corset like this is heavy duty black satin, and it's bonded to a cotton base, and then it's got the cotton inside. It's going to take an awful long time for the laces to damage it if you're tying them around the waist. But if you've got an embellished corset and it's got a really fancy fashion layer, then you really shouldn't tie the laces around the waist at all, because it will damage it and it will rub, and is not good for the corset at all. So yeah, of course it's your corset and you can do what you like, but from your corset's point of view, because I'm talking about your corset's point of view in this video, then please don't do it if you can avoid it. And thirdly, and this is the biggie, is you have to unlace the back of your corset before you take it off. And if you've tried on a corset in a store, if you've tried on a corset in our store and you've been getting on really well with the assistant, and suddenly you get this icy glare from them, this will be why, because you have to unlace the back. If you don't unlace the back, what tends to happen is that one of the pins will get stuck, and it will be this middle pin. So your corset will be like that. You can undo the top, you can undo the bottom, and I've had people say, "Oh, I don't need to unlace the corset, I can just pop it open." And it's like, no, please don't do that. You'll have all the pressure on this middle pin here, and it'll break. And it's not designed to have all that pressure on the one pin with you struggling trying to undo your corset, because once you're at that level, then really it's too late. You're already putting too much pressure on there, even even if you're then trying to struggle to undo the laces at the back, you always need to loosen the corsets, loosen the laces at the back a lot before you try and open the front busk. And this goes with experience as well. Once you've got used to your corset, then you'll know how much you need to loosen it at the back. But if you're new, then always err on the side of caution, and unlace it as much as you possibly can, so it is literally loose on your body before you try and undo that pin. And this is a cardinal sin when it comes to corsets. When I saw a corset of ours for sale on a second-hand group a couple of weeks ago, and it said, "Oh, the middle pin's missing, but it doesn't detract from wear." And I was like, "Oh, please!" I felt I couldn't butt in because it's nothing to do with me, but that's what happens if the middle pin's missing. It's because someone has, had a big battle with their corset trying to loosen it like this. So please don't do that. That is the absolute worst thing you can do to kill your corset. One quick tip is that if you get your corset stuck in this bit in a knot and you can't undo it, if you have a chopstick, I keep one in my pen pot at work and at home, is you can actually loosen the knot using a chopstick, and that you can put this in the knot and it will loosen the knot. And that's one easy tip of how to get out of a corset if you're on your own and you've got a knot in the back. If you do have any questions about corsets or waist training, please let me know, and in the meantime, take care, and I'll catch up with you soon.